Oh, welcome to part 2. First thing we want to do is middle click on your mouse to select everything in that cargo hierarchy. And let's just add that to a new layer. And just put cargo. Alright. And let's hide both of these. Matter of fact, I'm going to hide them. This hides them in the viewport, the eyeballs. This hides them from in the object manager. So it's nice because you can clean out your object manager. You're not looking at which hierarchy you need to be in. So let's go ahead and put a null in here, and I'm going to call this belt. Oops, belt. And what we want to start with is a rectangle spline. And I'm going to go down here and we're going to just change some of these dimensions. These are all going to change again, but just to work with. So for the width, let's put 2000. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, it works great. And 400 probably goes to 200. And then the rounding, let's make it 100 if it'll go. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So this is going to be our start, but this is going to change, and I'm going to go ahead and turn that off for now. Oops, that's what we're working with. Main rectangle. Let's don't do that. Okay, so I'm going to put my belt down here, and I'm going to put our rectangle here. And first thing we want to do is get a cloner. This is Mograph cloner. And I'm going to pull it in below that rectangle in the same hierarchy. And we're going to grab a plane, or I'm sorry, polygon, and I'm going to put it into cloner, and I'm going to just clone that right onto the rectangle. All right. And if we change this to even, and we want to deselect per segment, because we want this as close to our cloner as possible, smooth rotation. And we want to put our polygon in +X. All right. So let's check the movement of this. I think I'm going to try 3 so we can see which way these are moving. And yeah, they're moving backwards. Okay, so what we want to do is go into our rectangle and come down here to reverse. Okay, and that's just going to reverse the sequence, the internal sequence, and now we're good. All right, let's back it up and go into our polygon. And the width, we're going to have to adjust this later too. Let's make it 700 for now. And the height is going to go way down. We are going to be putting in a lot in there. So we're basically going to create our conveyor belt from clones, all right? Okay, and so moving along, and we're going to have to make adjustments to that stuff later as well. All right, so I want some thickness to this, so I'm going to select that polygon. I'm going to hold Option, go to Simulate, and yes, we're going to use the cloth again. Get rid of the subdivision. Just down in here so we can see this. And let's see. Yeah, you know, actually, yeah, let's do it in positive numbers. You don't need parallel for this. That probably will slow us down a little bit. No, we're still good. All right. So that's the start of it, but we also need something underneath it. And at least I need something underneath it. And so grab your rectangle, and I have these CV, just create an extrude. As a matter of fact, for this, it's more work going in because I got to change things. And I just want to show you a couple of things here. Let me get this to constrain. That way it won't extend above our clones. As a matter of fact, we can, now that we put this cloth surface in here, we can move our polygon. I think it's on X. No, yeah, it is on X. Just move it up. I've got a -2, and that pulls it above there. And let's extrude this out. And you're going to see it's going to extrude not in the way we want it, but that's okay. 700. And we're going to fix all that in a minute too. So before we go any further, let's get rid of this. Let's go down here, just right click and hit remove, because I'm happy with the carriage width top. All right, so what we want to do is I want to drive this whole depth of this conveyor belt by the rectangle extrude. And so I'm going to grab this movement and put it in here. And we don't really want Y, X and Y, so I'm going to right click and say remove, just right click over the Y and remove. And then I want to go in here and say show always. Otherwise, that has to be active. You have to have it clicked before you see this. And also, just so we can know what it is, let's show what the object is. Okay, and so now we have our control out here. And if I were really, going to be doing a lot with this, I would probably build belt controls up here. But this is going to work for us just fine. All right. And so on our belt null, let's grab a Cinema Xpresso tag. And this is what's driving everything. So let's pull that in. And we are going to pull, this is Z. We want movement, which is in the object tab, and movement in Z. So let's go into the object properties, movement Z. That would have been messed up. Okay, and we're going to pull the cloner in. And the cloner, we want in the transform tab, we are probably going to have to transform this in Y. And so if I move that, well, it should be exactly 350. It should be half of that 700. And that, in fact, is what it is. So we need Y in the transform tab. I don't know if I can just pull in Y. Let's find out. Yep, I can. So we can't just hook that up direct because we're going from 700 to 350, and that makes no sense. So we need our famous calculate range mapper. So we're going to set up a range. And before I hook that up, I want to see, okay, our movement is in centimeters and our transformation is in centimeters. So let's set up this range. So we know we're inputting 700. That's from the extrude. Okay? And we know for that input lower, we want to output minus 350. And I know that because it lines up. So in order to create a range, it's pretty simple. All we do is come in, put in 700, the asterisk key, a 2, which means asterisk means multiply. Accept that. And then you can put in minus 350. Now, I, of course, know what these are without this math. But sometimes you end up with some really wonky numbers. And this math is the quickest way to actually get these exact. So I'm going to hook that to Y. We should get no jump, and we don't. And now, if I go up to my, I'm going to save, because I haven't saved. You probably should too. I'm going to go up to my 700, and if I pull that out, okay, it looks like it's not working, but actually it is. It's working perfectly because it's staying centered on our extrude. So the only thing we have to do now is set it up so that our conveyor parts also move with this. All right, so let's pull in our polygon, and let's check what our polygon is. And the width is, of course, 700, because that's how we set it up. And I'm going to just pull that width in, okay? And I'm going to put it to that. All right, and that's not going to work. What am I? Yeah, it is. What am I thinking? Yep, that's going to work perfect. Okay, and so if I pull this out, now everything extends, and we don't have to keep messing around, because we want to be able to manipulate this belt for whatever size we need. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. 700, we'll just stay there for now. And that works. Now, there is one thing I want to do, and let's go into this extrude a minute. Let's reduce down this radius. Now, I'm only going to do this on one side. I'm not going to mess with the back. We're not, I mean, you should, especially if you're going to, do something with this. I'm just trying to get rid of some of that edge. As a matter of fact, I think I'm just going to put a regular cap for now because I want to see how these are at the exact edge of this extrude, and this is what I was getting at. Let's see. It may render okay. Yeah, it's all funky. So let's click in a new node, Xpresso, and go down to calculate. We want to add in a math node. And if we hook this into here, and then we'll hook the output from the math node into our width so it disconnects it from there. And all we need to do is, let's see, we might only need to add 1 or 2. 1 does it. To be on the safe side, just add 2 centimeters. And that's adding to both sides, okay, evenly. And if we got rid of this fillet cap, whatever. Yeah, okay. So there we go. All right. And so we got something pretty cool. All right. I do want to show you something on these caps. It's going to be real quick, but it'll give you some ideas of what you can do with these caps, even though I plan on not using it. And this is just a file that I have with these caps, extruding a rectangle. And I'm sorry if you already know this, that it'll be boring, but some people may not, and this is kind of an important thing. So right now it's set to fillet cap, and I'm going to come down to 2 steps. All right, and you can't see that real well, so I'm going to really exaggerate that. And I'm not going to do it on the other side. You have to do both sides, but we're just going to work with this start side, okay, just so I can show you what's happening. Now I have this blue material set on here. I'm going to pull this yellow material onto here, okay? And if I come down, just select the texture tag and go into the tag, there's a selection here. And so if I put in C1, okay, now that's just going to color the cap, okay? And then I'm going to take this green and drag it on here. All right, and it's coloring everything. But again, if I go into the texture tag and come in here and put R1, that's for rounding. Okay, so now we've got everything covered. And if you change your steps, it's going to carry over, half circle, 1 step. And it's just a nice thing to know, all right? And of course, you have to do it on the other side. And you do it on the other side by, you can copy that material by control clicking and go back into the tag and just change the 1 to a 2, and the same with the cap. Okay, and just change the 1 to a 2. All right, so now you can't see that real well because I didn't make it as big as the other side, so there. Okay, so now you can see that, and then you can change these colors. So the other thing is this kit. Now if we just grab the fillet, okay, it still holds because the cap is separate. We just remove the cap. Now we do the same for here. All right. And let's say that, well, that's great, and I can see inside, but I don't want to see these same colors. Well, let's grab all these colors. We get the texture tag, and let's just put front. Okay. Now we've got a gray on the inside. Let's create a red color. And it's just real helpful to know this if you're not familiar with it. Okay, and then here in the texture tag, we just want to put back. So now we've got everything colored, and you don't have to turn it into a, convert it to a polygons and points to get some variation on the colors. So after I showed you all that, I'm not going to use any of that. I'm going to put caps for none and none. And then I'm going to, with that select, I'm going to hold down Option, come back to our Simulate Cloth. All right, get rid of the subdivision. And then let's come down in here and probably going to pull this, nope, pull it in positive. And what do I have? About 5.6 is good. Okay. And you really can't make this extrude move, the skin of this. You can animate a texture on it, but then you have to match it to the speed of this. And then you can put wheels in here or whatever you want. And I do want to move this polygon up a little bit more. Just pull it out. Okay, we'll just get some variation. And then let's hold Control and duplicate this, and we're going to put it under there, and I think it's 90. in H. And it gives us this little lip thing, all right? And we're going to have to reduce this way down. We actually may have to reduce the others way down too. And then I think it's an X. Yeah, let's pull this down into there. I don't want it to extend too high above because these are going to become dynamic and it can actually mess it up. But I do like them standing up a little bit. But what I really like is how they show through the bottom. Now if we hit play, it actually looks like this whole thing is turning, and which is what we want, and that's pretty cool. All right, so now the other thing we have to do though is we have to copy this, and I want to pull this into there. And all I'm doing is pulling this, so making this node belong to that polygon, so it's polygon 1. And we're gonna actually copy this. It's just if you're going to have them different colors, it's just nicer to have it. Okay. Now we want to actually subtract 1. All right. So now it's indented slightly. You can still see it on the inside. And you can, yeah, it's kind of cool with the belt too. Okay. So let's leave it there. All right. Now let's check this. I'm going to save again. I'm going to check the belt width. And now everything works great. And let's undo that. And the other thing we want to do is now we still have these controls here, all right, width and height, and everything adjusts. But there's one other thing. Let's see. That's working pretty good. But we're going to do one last thing. Let me see something. Yeah, there. Okay. We're going to do one last thing. Select all these. Let's just make it a color. I stay away from yellow because yellow indicates a node that's not working right. Okay. And you sure don't want to open up your Xpresso window and see a lot of nodes that aren't working right. All right, so let's go into our cloner. All right, I'm going to take this down to 140. I think that's going to be enough. Actually, maybe we might need 145. Let's make it 146. Okay. Okay, so we want to mark this as belt. All right, belt rectangle, and I'm going to drag that in here. And I want to grab another spline node, general spline, and we're going to click, hold, object, get our length, and when I need a result node. All right, so that's the number. We don't necessarily need to know it or be able to see it. But we're going to create a range again. Okay, Xpresso General, calculate range mapper. This time we have two different parameters. All right, and it's, oops. Oh, that's not what I want anyway. Thank you. All right, so I want to use the length of this rectangle spline to control the number of clones that are on our belt, so that no matter what size we make it, the amount of clones on the belt looks the same, okay? So if we remember right, oops, we need the belt, and this is centimeters. When we get into the clones, it's really a real number, okay? And so if we go in here and we choose 0 to 100, okay, that's our second parameter. So let's go up into our, oh no, actually this is the figure, and this is where we're going to be able to use our math again. So we want, in our input lower, we want 4228, or whatever number you have, 0.563, all right? And the amount of clones we want is 146. Let's go back into our range mapper and put in 146. So what this means is when this total length of this rectangle is at this number, there should be 146 clones. So what we want to do is let's take that number, copy it, let's paste it in here, and we're going to do asterisk 2, hit return, and then we're going to put 146, copy, and put that in here, paste, asterisk 2, 292. All right, and so now what we need to do is we need to grab our count parameter. Oops, actually, we need to drag our cloner in first. Then we need our count parameter. Drag it right into there. All right, and let's hook it up. Nothing should jump, and it doesn't. So if we go in and change, let's say we change our length, okay? Changing the length, and you don't notice any difference, okay? Change the height, change the rounding, okay? We had 146 clones when we started. Now we've got 208. So it's going to automatically keep everything even. So I do want to go back into this rectangle, and I believe it was, not that it matters, 2,000, 200, and this was 100. Okay. So make sure you save it. I'm going to color these. And let's see if we use blue in there. I don't even know. Okay, that's good enough. Just something different so you can tell the difference. All right, because we're going to make a duplicate of this belt setup, I'm going to middle mouse click this, select everything, and I'm going to come up to the tools and grab the naming tool. And in the prefix, we want to put A underscore, all right, and then hit replace name. So what's that going to do is put A's on everything here, and it's also going to make the nodes in the Xpresso tag unique. And so now I want to go ahead and copy that belt. Just control click. I'm going to remove this one, and I'm going to middle mouse click, grab this naming tool again. Let's get that out of there, and we're going to hit replace A underscore with B underscore. All right. Replace name, and now everything in here has a B. But the beauty of this is this everything in this Xpresso window now also has the B, and that's what we want. Okay, so I think we're going to middle mouse click this and add this to its own layer for now. Go in here, and we want to call this B. Oops. Underscore belt, or whatever you want to call it. And let's get something that's a little not quite as dead as this color. Okay. All right. And I'm going to hide that from everything. Okay. Because this is our main belt on the top. So we want to do, oh yeah, and it also placed a controller. So let's put that down here. So if you remember back to the overview of what we're going to do in this tutorial, you may recall that this main rectangle up here is going to drive everything. And so it's also going to drive the width of our belt. And I'll show you how that's going to work. Let's pull this main rectangle in here. And let's go new node Xpresso General and come down to Spline. And click on that object, drag it, release, and hook up the object. And again, we need the length, okay? And the belt rectangle is what we want to drive the width of. So I'm going to drag that in and pull it out a little bit. And if I come to there, to the object, I'm going to grab the width. Okay, and if I refresh that, we'll be in good shape. Okay, and it's moving away and everything. So I do want to get our other controls in here so we're not digging through this hierarchy. And I want the height. The width is being driven, of course, by the main rectangle, but the height and the radius. And I'm going to right click with those selected, add to HUD. I'm going to pull down, hold down Command key and click on the top of this and drag it over here. I'm going to right click, say show always. That way if we click away, it remains. Now I already know that I want the height of that belt rectangle to be 80. And the radius is going to be automatically 40. I think that's the greatest it can be. Yep. Okay. So let's go ahead and color this real quick. Something in there is good. And we want to turn our conveyor and our cargo back on. And we're going to go F4 into the front view. And I'm going to grab this belt by the null. and pull it up here real close in there. I'm going to go into the coordinates manager and just tweak that on X. I'm trying to get it pretty close to this null we created. And if you remember, this is the end of our spline, and this is where the clones, the cubes, would start looping again. Okay? And we can make adjustments to that later if necessary. So, oops, while I'm in here, I'm going to use Y in the coordinates manager to pull this down. And I want it very close to the cube, but not intersect. Okay. Let's go F1 back into perspective view, and we see a problem there. Go into F2, oops, F2 top view. And we need to pull our belt down a little bit. About there looks good. And then I'm going to adjust the width of that. Yeah, it looks good. Before we go any further, I want to open up our belt null and drop this red material onto this top polygon in the belt cloner so we can see the clones a little better. All right, so let's hit play and oh, okay, so the clones are falling through our belt, and the reason for that is because we never made our belt dynamic. So right click, come down to simulation, grab a collider body tag, individual elements set to all, automatic set to, this is the shape, set to moving mesh. And then just, let's take the bounce down to 0 and back that up. And okay. All right. So they're falling funny. Okay. They're not bad, but I think, okay, let's go into our main cargo null. And I don't know if we ever changed this back to, yeah. See, it's on collision. Let's make that immediate because we want the belt to carry these over because we're going to make some changes to our cloner. And I also noticed that our polygon, that initiates the dynamics, is also, even though it's not visible in the viewport, I still have it on, and I'm going to turn the dynamic tag off as well. So let's see where that leaves us. And not great. But I did notice something else, and that is we've got a set of clones sitting right back here at the edge. I don't even know if these fall off or no, they move forward. But I think we might be better served if we offset these clones. So let's go into the cargo line cloner in the object tab, and we just want to offset, oh, too much. Let's see. Oh. Let's see what the back looks like. All right, that looks good. Let's try 3 and then we can adjust it later. Okay. I'm going to go into front view so we can see this a little easier, a little better. And they actually look like they're doing pretty well. Yeah. Usually about 4 of these lines, and about the 4th one gets off a little bit, but then they straighten back out. So we've already way past that. And we'll let it run to the end just to be sure. But I don't see anything falling out here. I move it up here, it looks like they're dumping. And all right, so that actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to go back into F1 perspective view, And it would seem that now that our belt is dynamic and should be carrying the clones, that we should be able to turn off the rate on our line cloner so that there's no movement, because when we get to the effectors, it's going to be important that these clones don't loop, okay? And I experimented around with turning loop off, and that created a whole nother set of problems. So let's see what happens here, though. Let's turn our rate to 0, all right? So that now the only thing that's moving the clones forward will be our dynamic belt. And let's see what happens. And oh boy, we've got a huge mess. So these are never going to fall into the carriages, okay? So let's back that up. That is not going to work. But I did figure out, because I ran into all these problems and trying to get this to work right. And the solution's pretty cool. Requires a keyframe or two. And what we want to do is I'm going to put a keyframe for 6% at frame 0. And my play around said, what I discovered was that about 30 frames, and you can start to, well, I'll show you in a minute. And you want to put this to 0, okay? And I'm going to hit 0. And so now let's back it up and start this forward. And now you see what's happening? See these little dots, these white dots? I hope you can see these. This is actually this cargo cloner. I think if I turn, oops, if I turn that dot out, yeah, well, the clones will disappear, but also those dots. And those dots are the original position, okay? And so what's happening is they're going to stop in a second there. They were moving, and now they stop, all right? And that's going to help us later on, plus it's going to give us a more accurate fall on the dynamics. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to go into F4 front view so we can see how these are dropping now. I may have to adjust the main spline, main rectangle of the conveyor. Well, maybe not. There, now you can see these white dots that are not moving. That was the original position of our clones of the liner, clone cargo line. And so those being stationary now is going to help us a great deal later on. Okay, so that's all looking pretty good. I'm going to F1 back into perspective view. And I think what I want to do is just bake this real quick. So to make sure that everything is working right, Command D, and I'm going to hit bake, and then I'm going to be back when this is done. It will take a few minutes. So it's baked, and let's see how it's looking. It's looking real good. Okay, so let's go to part 3 and color these clones and transform them into the spheres.